The foreman on site that morning was not me. It was a deadline, and it had been winning since 6 a.m. I was kneeling on a second-floor subfloor in a century-old farmhouse outside Almonte, Ontario, wedging a new joist beside a rotted one, while the November wind found every gap in the siding and reminded me exactly how old that house was. My knees were sore, my thermos was empty, and the heritage inspector was due in 40 minutes, which meant I had 35 minutes to make 40 minutes of work disappear. That was when my phone rang. Unknown number, Toronto area code. I almost let it go. I should have let it go. "Is this Callum Reid?" a woman asked. "Depends what broke," I said. A pause. Not offended, just measuring. "My name is Vera Ashworth. I'm calling about Ashworth Timber." I sat back on my heels. Ashworth Timber was not a name you forgot in heritage construction circles. 3 generations of family-owned sawmills in the Ottawa Valley. A portfolio of restored century homes, and enough old-growth white pine still in their inventory to make serious restorers practically emotional. I had used their stock on 2 projects. It was the kind of material that made work feel like it meant something. "I know the name," I said. "Good," she said. "Then you know we've been around for 80 years, and you may have seen that we are currently in the process of not making it to 81. I heard it in her voice. Not panic, something more controlled than panic. The kind of steadiness people use when they have already cried about something and decided crying was finished. "I'm listening," I said. "Not on the phone," she said. "I need to meet you. Today if possible. Tomorrow at the absolute latest." I looked at the joist in my hand, at the inspector timeline on my phone screen, at the gap in the floor where cold air was rising like an opinion. "I can be in Ottawa by 4, I said. "I'll come to you," she said. "Send me the address." She arrived in a silver SUV, alone, which surprised me. No driver, no assistant, no lawyer in the passenger seat. Just Vera Ashworth, stepping out of a vehicle she had clearly driven herself. In a long wool coat the color of slate and boots that were not designed for a renovation site, but handled it without complaint. She was maybe 50, with dark hair pulled back. And the kind of face that had been handsome most of her life, and had now graduated into something harder and more interesting. She looked at the farmhouse scaffolding, the lumber delivery stacked under tarps, the mud tracks across what had once been a proper gravel drive. "You actually are in the middle of something," she said. "Usually am," I said. "Coffee's in the trailer. It's been sitting since noon, so it will either wake you up or make you angry." She followed me in without asking a second time. I poured 2 mugs, handed her one, and watched her take a sip without making a face. "Points for that." "My father's will," she said, setting the mug down. "There's a clause." "There usually is," I said. "The company passes to me fully at the first of the year, but there is a condition. I have to be legally married before the board meeting on December 23rd or operational control shifts to my brother Lawrence until a judicial review can be completed. Lawrence wants to sell. He has wanted to sell for 4 years. He already has buyers. 2 of them are developers who would tear down the mill and put up a storage facility." I looked at her over my mug. "So you need a husband by the 23rd. "A legal one," she said. "Yes. And you're standing in my construction trailer because Lawrence tried to buy your property on Lanark Road 18 months ago through a numbered company." I set my mug down. "That was him." "Yes. He offered $110,000 over market value." "That usually works," she said. "Not on a property my grandfather cleared by hand." She looked at me steadily. "No, it didn't. Which is why I'm here." I crossed my arms. I was still in my work vest, insulation fibers on my sleeves, a pencil behind my ear that I'd forgotten about. Vera Ashworth sat across from me in her wool coat, looking like she had made harder decisions than this before breakfast. "Why not your lawyers?" I asked. "You obviously have lawyers." 3 of them, all either already married or in Lawrence's contact list. "Friends? Too easy to threaten." Someone from your board? Conflict of interest. I exhaled through my nose. So you worked your way down the list until you found someone stubborn enough to say no to your brother and independent enough that he can't pressure them. Yes, and that's me. That's you, she said. I researched you, Callum. Your company, your work, your reputation. I know what I'm asking you to risk. Do you? I said. It was not a question. Your business reputation, your privacy, your name in a story that might get ugly before it gets clean. She reached into the interior pocket of her coat and pulled out a folded document. She didn't open it all the way, just enough to show it was already drafted. Everything is protected. Your business, your property, your assets. Clean dissolution terms once the board situation is resolved. Independent counsel your own, not mine. I had it arranged before I called you. I looked at the document, then at her. The clause is real, she said. My father wrote it 40 years ago when he was afraid Lawrence and I would fight. He thought a stability requirement would keep whoever took over from doing something reckless. He didn't account for it being used as a trap. Is it real? I asked. The marriage. She paused. It would be legal. I know it would be legal. That's not what I asked. Her jaw moved once. I don't know what it is yet, she said. I know what it has to look like. I know what the board has to believe. I know what the lawyers need to file. Past that, I can't promise you something I haven't had time to examine. That was the most honest answer she could have given me. I respected it more than I wanted to. There are 20 people whose work runs through my company, I said. Framers, finishers, a plasterer who drives from Carlton Place every morning and will not retire because he says he'll go soft. If Lawrence comes after you and hits me in the process, they get the shrapnel. I know, she said. And Ashworth's timber inventory, the old growth stock. If he sells it off, heritage builders in this valley lose access to the only irreplaceable materials supply left in 300 kilometers. I know, she said again. And this time something in her voice cracked open slightly, just at the edges. I stood up, which was not a decision as much as it was my body needing to move. I walked to the trailer window and looked out at the farmhouse. The inspector would be here in 20 minutes. The joist was still not finished. If I say yes, I said, I have conditions, tell me. You meet my crew. Not a handshake meet, a real one. You come to the shop, you spend time, you understand what you're asking them to absorb. All right. And if this goes sideways, if Lawrence finds an angle, you don't throw me in front of it to protect the business. She stood. I will not do that. Because you're protecting me, I said, or because you're the kind of person who doesn't do that? She looked at me for a long moment. Both, she said. But mostly the second one. I turned around. Okay, Vera Ashworth, let me finish my inspection. And then let's go find a courthouse. My shop was on a back road east of Perth, Ontario. A converted dairy barn with good bones, double doors, wide enough to bring in an 8-foot door assembly, and a sign above the entrance that read Heritage Restoration. In letters my dad had painted, and I had never seen the point in replacing. It smelled like wood shavings, linseed oil, and the particular sawdust that comes from something genuinely old. Vera arrived there the next morning at 8. She had dressed practically. Dark jeans, a heavy sweater, real boots this time. I appreciated the effort but did not say so. Donna was the one who saw her first. Donna had been running my front office for 9 years, had opinions about everything from stain ratios to client emails, and was capable of a silence that made grown contractors reconsider their life choices. This her? Donna asked me, not quietly. Vera Ashworth, Vera said, extending her hand. Donna shook it and looked at me. You going to explain why there's a woman from a timber dynasty in my shop at 8 in the morning? She needs help, I said. The expensive kind? The complicated kind. Donna looked at Vera with the same look she used on warped lumber, assessing whether it was salvageable or just trouble in a nice shape. Can you make coffee? Vera blinked. Yes. Good. Callum can't. Machines in the corner. Filters are above it. She handed her a bag of ground coffee and walked back to her desk. Vera looked at me. I shrugged. She's not wrong about the coffee. I walked her through the shop while the morning got started. Showed her the ongoing projects. A set of 6-panel doors being stripped and remortised for a house in Westport. A window sash. Rebuild for a limestone church near Merrickville. 3 mantelpieces from an estate sale that needed cleaning before anyone could tell what they actually were. Vera touched the limestone piece carefully, running her thumb along a cove profile. That's hand-carved, she said. 1880s something. You can tell because a machine would have made that radius consistent. She looked at the variation in the carving, at the human error in it that made it more valuable, not less. We sell timber, she said quietly. I know what old-growth wood costs to find now, but I've never really thought about where it goes after. It goes here, I said. Or places like here. And if there are no places like here, it goes into dumpsters because nobody left knows what to do with it. She looked at me, and something settled in her face. Not comfort, clarity. My guy Russ came out of the finishing room with a question about glue joints on the church window and stopped short when he saw Vera. Russ was 61, had been doing this work since before I was born, and had the handshake of a man who has never owned a soft opinion. Who's this? He asked. Vera Ashworth. She's going to need some patience from everyone here for the next few weeks. Russ looked at her. Ashworth Timber? Yes, she said. Your white pine is the best stock I've worked in 30 years. Thank you, she said, and I could see she meant it fully. You in trouble? He asked. She met his eyes. Yes. Russ nodded slowly. Then I expect Callum's already said yes, because he's an idiot for a good cause. He walked back into the finishing room. I heard him say something to the apprentice that I could not quite make out. But the apprentice laughed. Vera turned to me. He likes you. He's known me since I was 22 and wrecked my first mortise chisel in the first 10 minutes. What did he say? He told me a chisel was for the wood, not for my frustration. Then he made me sharpen it for an hour. She smiled. Smaller than the situation needed, exactly the size it was. The legal side was faster than it should have been. Or maybe it only felt that way, because we had both already decided. My independent lawyer, a man named Gordon Tremblay, who worked out of a low-rent office in Smiths Falls, and had the highest reputation to overhead ratio of anyone I had ever hired, went through every page while Vera waited in the hall. You understand this is unusual, Gordon said. You said that twice, I told him. I'm making sure you heard it once. Everything about it is unusual. The protection is real. He looked at the page. It is. Your property, your accounts, your business structure. She's walled it off better than I would have on your behalf. She's protecting me. Yes. Why does that bother you? He looked at me over his glasses. It doesn't bother me. It interests me. People who protect the person they're using tend to have complicated reasons. I took the pen. Gordon, let's go. At the courthouse in Perth, it was the two of us, Gordon, Vera's lawyer Patricia, a woman who communicated primarily through eyebrow movement, and a justice of the peace named Bilodeau, who had clearly performed this specific ceremony enough times to have developed a philosophical acceptance of whatever walked through the door. He read the language. We agreed to it. Vera's voice was steady the entire time, and when she said yes, she looked straight ahead, not at me. That was fine. I understood it. This was the legal part. The other stuff, if there was any other stuff, would have to find its own time. When it came to rings, Vera reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out a plain gold band, thin, scratched along the edge. My mother's, she said. I know it's not. I know this isn't. I just couldn't come here with nothing. She offered it to me. I took it, looked at it. A woman who had driven herself to my work site, made office coffee, and asked a stranger to carry a complicated weight had also brought her mother's ring, because she could not bring herself to show up empty-handed. "It's the right thing to bring," I said. She slid it onto my finger. Her hands were steady right until the end. Then they weren't, just for a second, and she noticed me noticing, and she looked away. Bilodeau said, "We were married." Patricia made a note in her file. Gordon said nothing, which from Gordon meant he approved. The board meeting was in an Ashworth family office building in Canada, the kind of place that had been renovated just enough to look modern without admitting it used to have carpet from the 90s. 12 people around a long table, and Lawrence Ashworth at the far end. He was younger than I expected, maybe 45. Hair going silver at the temples, a suit that had been fitted correctly. He looked the way people look when they are used to being the smartest person in a room, and have not yet encountered evidence to the contrary. He looked at me, the way you look at a problem someone else brought in. "Vera," he said, "I have to say." She placed the marriage certificate on the table in front of Patricia without looking at him. "The condition is satisfied." "You married someone in 2 days," Lawrence said. "Someone none of us have ever met, who works with his hands in the Ottawa Valley." He smiled like that was the punchline. "Restoration contractor," I said. He glanced at me. "The full title is Heritage Restoration Contractor," I said. "If you're going to use it as an insult, use the correct one." One of the board members, an older woman named Mrs. Fontaine, who I would learn later had watched Lawrence try this sort of thing before, looked at the table to cover something in her face. Lawrence turned back to Vera. "The board won't recognize a transaction this rushed." Patricia set 3 documents in front of Mrs. Fontaine. "The clause specifies legal marriage before the meeting date. It does not specify duration, method, or prior board notification. The requirement has been satisfied." Lawrence's lawyer whispered something to him. He straightened his cuffs. "We'll be filing a challenge," he said. "This is a financial arrangement, not a real marriage." "Challenge it," Vera said. Her voice was so calm it was almost comfortable to listen to. "I'll be here." Mrs. Fontaine reviewed the paperwork twice. Looked at me for a moment with professional neutrality. "The condition has been met," she said. "Operational authority remains with Vera Ashworth." Lawrence sat back. He looked at me one more time. "Enjoy the valley." "I do," I said. He left. Mrs. Fontaine gave Vera a small nod on her way out that meant more than anything said in the room. Then Vera's phone went bright. Then mine rang. Donna, which meant something was already moving. Donna's voice was flat, which was her version of alarmed. "There's a piece going up on a regional business news site. Your name, Vera's name, words like sham and scheme and family source." I looked at Vera. She had already seen it on her own screen. "Lawrence," she said. Outside, her SUV was visible from the 3rd-floor window. A news van had parked behind it. I picked up her folder from the table. "You needed a husband by the 23rd, I said. She looked at me. "Pack for a week," I said. "My place is smaller than you're used to. I'll warn you now." She arrived that evening, with 2 bags, and an expression that said she had not had a quiet hour in 3 days. My place was a converted carriage house behind the shop. Proper insulation, real floors, low ceilings in the bedroom that I had learned to navigate by instinct. The kitchen table had a groove in it, from years of plans spread out with metal rulers. The wood stove in the corner was the best thing about the place, and worked exactly the way it should. Vera looked around. "It's warm," she said. "Good start," I said. I meant that positively. "I know." She put her bag down by the door and looked at the stove. "I should tell you. I haven't cooked in about 4 years. I work late, and I order things. There's a Thai place in Perth that delivers if you phrase it like a local," I said. "And there's a grocery store. I can handle basics." "I can handle basics," she said, slightly defensive. "We'll see," I said. Her mouth made a shape that was not quite a smile. The first week was strange in a way that had nothing to do with romance. It was just two people with entirely different daily structures, suddenly sharing a kitchen and a bathroom and a coat rack. Vera worked from my kitchen table, from 7 in the morning until 9 at night, most days. Lawrence had apparently decided to make the board review as complicated as possible, which meant Patricia was on the phone almost hourly, and Vera spent a lot of time taking notes in a handwriting so small I could not read it, even when I was trying not to. I left for sites in the morning before she was fully awake. When I came back, the kitchen was slightly rearranged in ways I did not complain about because they were actually improvements. She had found a better place for the dish rack. She had discovered that the wood stove needed to be fed by 8, or the temperature dropped sharply by midnight. She fed it without being asked. Small things. One night I came back late from a site visit in Carlton Place. A salvage situation. Someone's porch had partially collapsed, and I had gone to assess what could be saved, and found her standing at the kitchen counter, reading something on her tablet with one hand, and completely failing to notice that the pot of water she had put on for tea was at a rolling boil, and had been for some time. Vera. She looked up. I reached past her and turned the burner off. How long has that been going? Looked at the pot, then at me. I don't know. I was reading. What were you reading? Lawrence's lawyers filed a request to depose the board members individually. Separately. It's a delay tactic. She set the tablet down and rubbed her face with both hands. I'm sorry. I'm running 17 things. How's the tea situation? Unclear. I made it. We sat at the kitchen table at 11 at night, and she told me about Ashworth Timber, the real version, not the board meeting version. Her grandfather had started it with a partner, who left after 2 years, so the family had run it alone since the beginning. Her father had been the one who pivoted from raw lumber sales to finished heritage-grade stock, which was a harder market but a more loyal one. He had known the difference between a commodity and a relationship. He used to say the wood remembers what it was, she said. He meant that old growth behaves differently because of its age. Tighter grain, more stability, but I always thought he meant something more than that. He meant something more than that, I said. She's looked at me. Wood from something that grew slowly remembers that growth, I said. New stock doesn't have the same memory. You can use it fine, but it moves differently. It responds differently. You can feel it when you're working it. She wrapped her hands around the mug. He would have liked you. I did not know what to say to that, so I said nothing, and she did not seem to need me to. She came to the shop 3 days in a row that second week. Not officially, just showed up. The first time, she sat in the front office with Donna and asked questions about the billing structure that Donna answered with suspicious thoroughness. The second time, she brought lunch. The third time, Russ put her to work holding one end of a door assembly while he checked the alignment, because he had run out of patience waiting for the apprentice to come back from a delivery run. She held it without complaining for 12 minutes. Afterward, Russ said to me quietly, "She doesn't flinch." "No," I said. "That's worth something." "I know." Donna came to stand beside me while we watched Vera ask Russ something about face frame joinery, and Russ answer at full length, the way he only answered people he had decided deserved his full attention. "You like her," Donna said. "She's a client," I said. "She's your wife," Donna said. "That's a legal formality." Callum. Donna looked at me with the flat patience of someone who has long since stopped being surprised by my capacity for self-deception. "She reorganized your dish rack." I did not have a response to that. "Nobody reorganizes a dish rack," Donna said, "for a legal formality." I took her through the Ashworth mill in early December, which she had not visited in over a year. The operation was smaller than I expected. A main sorting shed, a kiln building, 2 smaller outbuildings, a yard full of stacked and graded lumber under good tarps. Inside the main shed, the smell was enormous. Decades of wood and oil, and the specific cold of a working building. She walked slower in here than anywhere else I had seen her walk. I moved along the graded stacks, reading the stock by sight, the way my father had taught me. White pine, yellow birch, some quarter-sawn oak from a demolition source. Tagged and stacked with real care. Someone here had known what they were doing, and still did. Your father graded this himself, I said. Until 3 years ago, she said. Then his eyes started going. Who does it now? Terry. He's been here 22 years. I pulled one board slightly from a stack, just far enough to look at the grain. Tight and even, the growth rings of something that had taken its time. Lawrence wants to liquidate this, I said. Yes, to a developer. The offer's already on the table. I slid the board back. This stock would take 60 years to replace. Minimum, I know, not just economically. 60 years of growth, 60 years of slow. You can't buy that or rush it or find a substitute. I looked at her. Your father was right. It remembers. She turned toward me and her face was difficult to read. Not closed, just full. The way a room looks when every shelf is occupied and there's nowhere left to put something new. I've been trying to explain that to a board of directors for 4 months, she said. In language they would respect. Stop translating, I said. Say it exactly like that. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Lawrence forced an emergency review on December 18th. His lawyers had assembled what they called a credibility analysis. A series of questions designed to make a rushed courthouse marriage look like what it technically was. The board convened. Lawrence's lawyer went first. Mr. Reid, where does your wife keep her personal documents? Left drawer of the kitchen desk, I said. She keeps them in a red accordion folder. Patricia's contact card is paper-clipped to the front, and her schedule for December? Complicated. She had 4 board calls last week alone. She went to Ottawa on the 11th for a meeting with a heritage funding contact and came back the same night because she didn't want to be away from the mill situation. She also drives herself, which I know surprised most of you. Someone on the board cleared their throat. And what does she take in her coffee? Black, I said. Until she's been up past 10, then too much sugar, and she doesn't mention it. A pause. I looked at Lawrence. You want more? Mrs. Fontaine turned to Lawrence's lawyer. I think we've heard enough. Lawrence leaned forward. You can't seriously. The board has heard the evidence, Mrs. Fontaine said. We'll reconvene after the holiday to confirm the operational structure. In the meantime, authority remains with Vera Ashworth. He left quickly. Vera and I were the last ones out of the room. In the hallway, alone for the first time in hours, she exhaled slowly. Her hand moved and found my arm, and she held it for a moment, not quite looking at me. You knew about the accordion folder, she said. I put a document back in it last week. You'd left it on the counter. And the sugar. Hard to miss. She turned to face me. The hallway was quiet. Her coat was on the chair behind her, and she had been in that room for 2 hours. And her hair had loosened. And she looked nothing like the woman who had stepped out of a silver SUV in November at my job site. She looked like herself. Callum, she said. And then she stepped forward and kissed me, quiet and real, with nothing performed about it. When she pulled back, I said, there are actual journalists in the lobby downstairs. I know, she said. So that wasn't for them. No, she said, it wasn't. We drove home in my truck, through the dark and the December cold, the highway pale under the first real snow of the season. She sat close enough that I could feel the warmth of her shoulder, and neither of us spoke much, because the talking felt like it could wait, and the quiet felt like it had earned itself. At the house she hung her coat. I started the wood stove. She put the kettle on and actually watched it. I'm going to be honest with you, she said, not turning around. All right. I don't know how to do this slowly. I've been running at speed for so long that slow feels like something I'd have to learn from the beginning. I sat on the edge of the kitchen table. I do slow for a living, I said, I work on things that need time or they fall apart. She turned around. Is that a metaphor? It's a description, I said. But you can read it both ways if you want. She looked at me for a long moment. Then something in her face settled, not resigned, decided. I don't want to rush it to have it, she said. I just don't want to be careful about it to the point of never having it at all. Same, I said. She nodded. The kettle started to whistle. She made 2 teas, set mine on the table beside me, and sat in the chair across from me. We sat there for a while, in the warm kitchen with the stove ticking, and the snow coming down outside, and neither of us needing it to be anything other than what it was. After the holiday, the board confirmed Vera's authority. Lawrence Challenge was formally closed in January. The buyers who had been circling moved on. Terry at the mill got a raise, which he did not expect, and Vera said nothing about until he found the revised paperwork on his desk. I started a restoration assessment on the main sorting shed. Some of the original timber framing needed attention, which felt like the most fitting thing I had been hired to do in years. Russ asked me one morning in February, without preamble, whether I was happy. I was cutting a test piece for a door profile. I thought about it. Yeah, I said. He went back to his work. That was the end of the conversation. From Russ, it was basically a celebration. Vera and I did not rush anything. We went slowly and on purpose, like something that knew it was worth the time. By spring, it was not a legal arrangement anymore. It had not been for a while. One evening in March, she came into the shop while I was finishing for the day. She stood in the middle of the floor, the way she'd stood in the mill that first time, taking in the smell and the light and the work, still visible in half-finished things, on every surface. My mother's ring fits you, she said. I looked down at my hand. The gold had warmed into something that felt like it belonged there. It does, I said. She walked toward me. Are you going to keep wearing it? I was planning on it, I said. Unless you need it back. I don't need it back, she said. She reached up and adjusted the collar of my shirt, a small gesture that had nothing to do with the collar, and everything to do with the kind of person who makes small gestures mean exactly what they are. When people ask me now how I met her, I tell them the truth. I was in the middle of a job, covered in insulation dust, and she showed up with a complicated problem and her mother's ring in her coat pocket, and the kind of honesty that takes a minute to recognize, but that you don't forget once you do. She needed something by a deadline. What we ended up with had no deadline at all.